Welcome back to another episode, Mom's Basement MMA. And joining me today from Alberta, Canada, is one of the most exciting amateur mixed martial artists in the entire country. And he's joining me today, Mr. Mike Rowe. Mike, before we get into anything else, I got to tell you, happy birthday. It's your birthday today, and you're spending it with me. Welcome to the show, and I hope that you have a nice steak dinner or do something cool later on today.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Yeah. It'll definitely be sticking on the chicken and veggie diet.
No booze, no booze. And the reason that Mike has to be modest is because on December 2nd in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, he will be competing at Unified MMA 47. So, Mike, big fight coming up for you. That's got to be another exciting opportunity to get back in there. We'll talk about your fights specifically, but we also got more fights coming on tonight on your birthday. We got a massive card on your birthday. So the UFC put a birthday gift right for you. I'm kind of envious. I wish it were my birthday today because UFC 281, you're talking about one of the best fight cards of the entire year. Your thoughts on some of these fights that we got tonight?
How can this card is loaded from top to bottom? Like, I mean, how do you say that you got Dominic Reyes on a prelim?
Exactly.
How can you say that, from Dominic Reyes on a prelim, Meatball Molly, one of the most exciting women's fighters as of recently, Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, that's going to be a car crash.
It will absolutely be a car crash. You've already started talking about some of the fights that I have circled that I wanted to get your opinion on. And I wanted to start with Dominic Reyes versus Ryan Spann. I think that's a really, really interesting fight. Mm-hmm. We know that Reyes has kind of been MIA for the past couple of years, hasn't been in action. The last time he fought was Jan. Was that the last fight?
Yeah, Jan Blachowicz.
Okay, so we're going on 24 plus months since he's been out. What are your thoughts on this one? And if you are a coach for Dominic Reyes, what are you telling him as he's getting ready to make that walk for the first time in a couple of years?
Honestly, just have fun, be yourself, get back to being in the moment when you were on the come up and when you were challenging John Jones for that light heavyweight title. Arguably one of the closest fights since Alexander Gustafsson to challenge John Jones, and some people even arguably could have swung that fight the other way and said Dominic Reyes could have won that fight. So, I mean, as his coach, just being like, hey, man, you've been in there with arguably one of the greatest fighters of all time, talent-wise. Go out there, have fun, be in the moment, and just make the most of it and just do your thing. They put you to being on top of the world. Just be in the moment, enjoy it.
How do you see that fight happening between Reyes and Spann?
I think Reyes is going to get the win. I think he's going to come back. After, like he said, after being out for about 24 months, I think he's going to come back. I think he had to take some time and just reinvigorate himself, refine himself. But I think talent-wise and just how good he is as an athlete, and an experience being in there with Jan Blachowicz, John Jones. Yeah, I just think I don't see Spann coming out with the win on that one.
I feel that Reyes is going to find a knockout. I don't see it's going the distance. I think Reyes will find it maybe in the second round. Maybe he'll get his feet wet. The first round will be a little bit of a feeling out process. And then I'm going to watch him to put the throttle forward and go for that KO. I think he gets it in the second round. That's how I see that one going. We have another interesting one. Dan Hooker versus Claudio Puelles. For Dan Hooker, it's been kind of choppy waters lately. He's one of the most exciting fighters in MMA, but he's also had some tough matchups as of late where he hasn't really produced. Arnold Allen, that fight really didn't go according to plan. Prior to that, he got smoked against Islam. We all knew that was going to happen. Yep. But he's going into this fight, which I feel is a pretty winnable fight for him. But you can't help but wonder, have we seen the best days of Dan Hooker? Where are his motivations? Where is he at from a confidence perspective? For somebody who's been in the loss column for quite some time, What are your thoughts about Dan Hooker entering this matchup against Claudio?
The thing that I love about Dan Hooker is, I mean, let's be honest, Dan Hooker's a dog. Dan Hooker took fights against Michael Chandler. Dan Hooker took the fight against Islam Makhachev on short notice. Dan Hooker, um, and how can you? I can't really discredit that guy because I mean, you look at the fights that he's taken. His losses aren't against debuters. His
Mm-hmm.
losses are against some of the toughest dudes in the world at lightweight, and like Arnold Allen is no joke. Arnold Allen is a 145 contender. Like Arnold Allen, I'm a little sad how Calvin Cater and Arnold Allen
Yeah.
turned out, but that is what it is. It's a sport. Things happen. But as far as Dan Hooker, I mean, look at he trains with Israel Adesanya. Um, that guy, I honestly do believe is going to ride a confidence high coming into this fight. I mean, we look at Izzy. Izzy looks like he had one of the best camps of his life, and I think that's going to pull along with Dan Hooker. I think Dan Hooker being a key component in that camp. I think Dan Hooker's coming in high of confidence. Had the best camp of his life, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see like an old prime Dan Hooker coming in because he knows that this is a must win and this is a very winnable fight for him.
Moving on up the card, I want to ask you about two more, and then we'll get to you. I promise. But these fights are just too crazy. I would have to shut down my MMA show if I did not talk about this fight. The Diamond, Dustin Poirier going up against Michael Chandler. This is the fight that everybody has circled. Everybody is anticipating a hell of a lot of violence. Do you see this one going the 15 minutes, or do you think there'll be a finish relatively early on?
I think and I love both guys. It's Michael Chandler's so entertaining. He's so charismatic. And I mean Dustin Poirier, how can you not like the guy? Um, I think if Michael Chandler comes out like a bull, like he always does, I think Dustin Poirier is too technical, and he'll keep it down the pipe, and he'll flatline Michael
Mm-hmm.
Chandler. I think if Michael Chandler can kind of pull back the reins a little bit and not come out so hard like a bull and straightforward, I think we could see more of a technical fight, but I don't see this one going the distance either way. I think these are two guys, they're going to be in the pocket and trying to take each other's heads off because they are two exciting fighters. And Michael Chandler just is on this tear of just creating violence. He just wakes up every day and chooses violence. It's like, whereas Dustin Poirier, I mean, we've seen in the past, he can be very technical. He is one of the best boxers in MMA. I mean, we see what he did, obviously, to my boy Connor.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, technically wise, I like Dustin Poirier on this one. I think just technical wise, he's just better. But there's
But
always a punch
there's
that
always
lands.
exactly,
Don't get caught.
and that's the one thing. Like, I think the only outcome for this fight that would surprise me is if it goes the distance. That's the
I
only
agree.
thing. That's the only thing that would surprise me. I do feel that one of these men are going to be successful in getting a knockout, and for Chandler, he could be getting smoked for 14 minutes, but he just needs one, and that's you're gone.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what your chin is. He just needs one, and you're gone. You could say
Yes.
the exact same about Dustin Poirier as well. That's what makes this fight so exciting.
Yes. And a little
Moving,
bit of bad blood.
and then a little bit of bad blood. Let's talk about the main event: Israel Adesanya going up against Alex Pereira. I know I'm not saying Alex's last name correctly because of the Portuguese, but bear with me here. But we got a really interesting fight. Everyone really knows what the backstory is. Israel's lost 2 fights to Alex. They weren't MMA fights. They were many, many years ago, and they were kickboxing bouts. When you look at this one from a psychological perspective, what do you think like the approach is for Israel Adesanya? Do you think those 2 losses actually make him more dangerous coming into this one? Or is it kind of a detriment? Is it going to like make him possibly maybe not fight so conservatively, not so defensively, and maybe press the gas maybe a little bit to kind of prove to people like, no, I am like one of the best fighters in the world, and like this guy beat me in kickboxing. Like I'm wondering a little bit if like it's an ego thing for him, and I'm
So
just curious how he'll approach it. Your thoughts?
so if we step back and we look at Israel's kickboxing record, he's 75-5. Okay, so that's 80 total fights. I mean, he's lost 5 times. Uh, um, he's lost twice to this man, but again, that's years ago. You look at the success that Israel Adesanya's had, the confidence that he rides in on, and I do believe that the MMA dynamic changes it a little bit because Israel Adesanya doesn't have to take him down,
Right.
but he just has to present that threat.
Mm-hmm.
If he presents that threat of, hey, this isn't kickboxing. Yes, we're going to have a striking match because I don't see either one of those guys taking each other down. They're two of the world's best kickboxers. But I think from a standpoint of Israel Adesanya, I think if he presents that little like threat of, hey, I could ankle pick you. Hey, I'm going to touch this and then continue to strike. I mean, as Alex, you have to respect that.
Mm.
The other thing that I kind of think we've seen in the past is Alex's gas tank.
It's a big cut. It's a
I'm
big cut.
like, I actually just before we jumped on the show, I just saw he hit 185, well, 84.6, and then he was already back up to 211 already. And like just that swing and weight, and what curious me is how is he getting the weight off? Is he running it off? Is he hot bathing it off? Is he going to have the legs? Because a lot of these guys, sometimes when you cut that much, at some point you have to start either whether you're on a bike in a sweatsuit or something, are you burning out your legs? And we've seen in the past his cardio has looked like it starts to fade. And if Izzy can push this 4th, 5th rounds, that's where we see the champ. And the champ's been there before.
We're talking about a 25-minute fight, to your point, and that is definitely an understated aspect of this fight that not a lot of people are talking about. He's a big dude, well into the 200 range. Now you're talking about a massive, massive cut. He makes the weight. There's only so much food and water you can put on your brain until you're back out in the octagon. And it makes you wonder, once we get out of rounds 1 and 2, if we do, what are those legs going to look like? What is that cardio going to look like? Is he going to start getting more aggressive? Like, oh man, like I gotta get this fucking guy out of here because I don't have the lungs. I don't have that air in me anymore. Makes me wonder how that's going to go down. And I will say this: I think Israel Adesanya is going to find a way to get it done. I do think he'll be the and still at the end of the night. Alex, a great fighter. I personally believe, however, that Robert Whittaker is a much more intensive challenge than this guy. I think Robert Whittaker, you put him up against Alex, and he freaking smokes Alex. And I said what I said. So,
yeah. The one thing I'll say, like to Izzy's confidence, I like the way he's approached this camp. He's been a lot less talk, and he's just been, you know what? I liked how he said, confidence wise, he said, it isn't about defending the belt. For me, it's about beating this man. And that speaks volumes to where his mindset has been. It isn't just another title defense. It's about, I'm 0-2 against this guy. I'm going to prove why I'm the champ and why I'm the best 185er in the world.
I really think it gives him a psychological edge personally. I think he learned a lot from those L's, and I think it's an opportunity for him, right? It's an opportunity for him to get one back because it's the only thing. If you're going to talk shit about Israel, you can say, oh, he's boring or he's not the most entertaining guy sometimes. Okay, that's fine. But aside from the Jan fight, when you look at his record, what you can talk about the Jan fight and then you talk about Alex. There's really not a whole lot else to talk about. And I think that, I think that just motivates him even more. I think you're going to see, I think we're going to see one of the best versions of him tonight. I want to shift gears though. I want to talk about you specifically now because Mike, very, very interesting story. You have a very interesting backstory. We covered part of that in the very first episode that we shot together. I don't know off the top of my head. I think it was like episode 98, 99, somewhere in there. If you guys haven't seen that one, make sure you go back, check that one out, and then you can come back and check this one out. But Mike, in that beginning, when I first met you and when we talked about your backstory, we talked about martial arts being a focal point in your life, if you will. And you just recently made this transition into mixed martial arts. But I want to pause there because on paper, you look like a guy that doesn't have a lot of experience, but actually the opposite's true. You probably have more experience than anyone else out there that you're competing against. And in a way, knowing that you have all that experience, albeit in a different martial art, we're not talking about mixed martial arts, but just mixed martial arts experience. Does that give you like more confidence as you approach these MMA fights against maybe some wrestlers that have like wrestled in high school or whatever the case is? Like in terms of just the entire picture, being a martial artist, I'm just trying to think because I don't know if I've ever met anybody with like a background quite like yours.
Just honestly, I think how you handle the moment is just totally different because it's like, yeah, okay, cool. There's people watching. Great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've been to so many tournaments where, there's hundreds of people sitting in the bleachers watching you. I've been to world karate championships where, you make it to the finals and there's everybody just crowds around the mat and everybody's just staring at you. Right. I mean, it doesn't really bother me. I find I actually kind of feed off of it. Like it's just a calming thing. And I think mentally you just find a home and you just zone in. Like you just, as soon as you start making that walk and you see that cage, you just zone in. Nothing else matters. There's nothing else matters. It's me and that man. It's got to be either me or him.
Do you recall, like, maybe you don't because you're, to your point, you're so in the moment, but when you think about your background, you already talked about it. You talked about like being a finalist in all of these karate tournaments, hundreds and hundreds of people watching you, everyone's crowding around the mat. So you go from an environment like that where I could imagine like that could psych you out if you're not used, like if you're not mentally locked in. I could definitely see that psyching you out. But now the dynamic's completely different. You're like the first fight on the undercard. People are still getting hot dogs and beer while you're fighting.
Yeah.
Is it in a way you could even say it's like kind of like a glorified sparring session of sorts, because I'd imagine you could probably hear your coaches pretty well, and the environment's different, and might even argue that some of your karate stuff was more stressful and taxing psychologically compared to being the first fight or second fight on an undercard.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you say like I think even though my record shows up as an 0-1 in amateur, I think in Alberta alone, I've made enough of a name and a waves around that people you better get your hot dogs and your beer prior because I mean, I'm showing up, I'm coming out, and don't blink because like it's pretty simple. I pride myself on trying to be like I'm an exciting stand-up 145er. Some people are trying to keep me out of this 145 division, trying to keep me at the 155, but that's okay. Yeah, it's definitely, I think I'm a very intriguing fight to watch. And yeah, I mean, December 2nd, we get to finally go at it again, and we'll see.
Well, for you, it's been a long time coming. Unified 43 was when you made your MMA debut, and you fought against Connor Krebs. I hope I said his last name correctly. This was a fight like nobody goes into their first AMI fight or first pro fight envisioning a loss. Like you just don't. Like everyone envisions going out there and getting like a knockout victory in the very first round. Whatever the case may be, you fell short in the very first amateur MMA fight.
Yep.
But I don't really want to talk so much about the fight of itself. It didn't go your way. And that gives you like a long time, man. Like that's been a long time from Unified 43 to where are we at? 47 coming up. That's a long time to think about the fight that was, adjustments that need to be made, and we'll get into like kind of the stuff you've worked in to become better. But like,
Yep.
what was that experience like in the aftermath of that fight? Didn't go your way. Was it like kind of an emo phase for a little while, or is it just back to work the next Monday morning?
So what was funny is actually a lot of people didn't know, but even I don't even think I mentioned it when we did our first interview,
Mm-hmm.
but I was out half of that camp with a fractured foot.
No, you
And then
you didn't tell me that.
and then I that fight week I was actually supposed to fight at someone else, and the guy pulled out. The other guy was, I think he was 1-0 or something. And then this guy stepped in fight week that had
Three,
5 fights
four.
already.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so and I was still realistically, I could only grapple and spar maybe the last 3 weeks of that camp.
Mhm.
And but anyway, not making excuses or anything, because the loss is a loss. You take it on the chin, you roll with it. But the next week, I had already actually signed a contract to fight in May. So I had, and actually, kind of backstory is the guy that I'm fighting December 2nd, I was supposed to fight in May.
Mhm.
And I went right back to training and I cracked 2 ribs.
That will make a fight not happen when you do
Yeah.
that.
And, I tried to push through it. I tried to grapple, and every time I just would sprawl and twist, it was just like, no, okay,
Yeah.
no. So I unfortunately I withdrew from that one, and then there was several opportunities that presented themselves going forward, but never happened. Unfortunately, it sucked. I wanted to fight. I wanted to get right back in there because I'm a believer in just staying active, and no matter what, um, it's like Conor McGregor once said, losses can make or break fighters, but wins can also make or break fighters. You get comfortable. And I was actually more hungry after I got out of the cage, and I immediately went and sat with my coaches, and I was like, I made this mistake, I made this mistake, I made this mistake. On the takedown, I did this, I did this. I need to fix that. Like, it wasn't sitting there, pouting, oh my God, I lost, whatever. It was like, no, these are the improvements. This is the time to make these mistakes. This is the time to grow. At the end of the day, nobody gives a shit
No.
about your amateur record.
Nope.
Nobody gives a flying fuck. Because at the end of the day, when you go pro, that's when it counts. That's when it starts. It's like, make the mistakes now, grow as a fighter, grow as an athlete, grow as a person, and have fun doing it while finding your identity as a mixed martial artist.
In my opinion, Mike, you're getting onto a long held belief that I've always had about amateur MMA, and it's this: anytime I talk to an amateur fighter, I say the same thing. I'm like, you should be on Tapology. You should be looking in your region. So if you're in Alberta, if you're in Ontario, whatever, you should be pulling down the list of the top ranked guys in Ontario, in Alberta, and you should be DMing every single one of those fighters saying you want to fight them. You should look for that number one guy. If he's 5-0, he's a champion, you should be hitting him up. And you'd be like, hey, dude, let's fight. I'm like, that's how you're going to get better. You should be trying to fight all of those guys. And then, you get all that experience under your belt. When you get ready to go for that pro debut, you can say, I fought the best of the best at the level I'm at. And you know what? You're going to find yourself against a pro that may not have taken that approach. And guess what? That discrepancy, that difference, you're going to see it in that very first pro fight. So even
100%.
if you were in the red as an AMI and you got out in the red as an AMI, if you fought nothing but sharks the entire time, I'll take that guy over the guy that fought a bunch of cans and was 10-0. I'll take that every day of the week.
100%. That's why when they offered me this guy with 5 fights on a week's notice, I was like, without a question, I was like, let's do it. I don't care.
Yeah, let's
go.
Let's freaking
roll.
I have to wonder, like, if you're the other guy, if you're Krebs or whatever, it's like, holy shit, this guy said yes. Like, I would be thinking that, like, wow, I did yeah, I wanted to fight, but I'm kind of surprised he's taking this fight. Like, oh shit, okay. Like, he had to have, like, I'm sure he shook your hand afterward and probably thanked you for the fight, because I bet a lot of people wouldn't have done
Yeah, we had a beer after, me and him,
that.
after he choked
Perfect.
me out. Well, yeah, we had a beer after, and I mean, we go our ways. I mean, eventually one day, I'd like to get that one back because I
Sure.
made some dumb mistakes that I know cost me that fight, and I'm like, eventually one day I'd like to get that one back. But in the same sense, he still hasn't fought since he fought me.
Well, there we go. So we'll see what the future has in store. After the fight, you've already talked about a couple different things. You talked about not being able to compete when you wanted to because of some unfortunate injuries that you picked up. But there's kind of a silver lining in all this. I know that you went to SBG Ireland for a few weeks. Tell me what that experience was like, because not everyone gets to obviously do something like that. That had to have had a huge impact on you psychologically, and then also as a martial artist. I bet just being surrounded with the type of fighters that are at that gym. I mean, I don't see how you don't get better being around people like that day in and day out.
Yeah, the when the opportunity came about, I mean, for me, being such a huge prime Connor fan,
Mm-hmm.
um, that was almost like I remember when I got the news, I was driving home from work and I just started yelling in my car because I was just like this is happening, right?
Yeah,
Like, not every day do you just, oh, hey, you want to go train, go learn from John Kavanaugh and Coach Dave Roach and, all those guys over there and just be on the mats with those guys like, Brad Katona and, fellow Canadian, as well as, the list goes on and on. I mean, there's Kiefer Crosby, yeah, Brian Morris from there. There's so many great fighters and so many young guys coming up over there as well. Like
a lot of
there's
those guys are in Bellator and they're tearing it up over there. They are
yeah,
tearing it up. You see all these Bellator events going to Dublin, and I mean, they're trotting these guys out, fight after fight after
yeah,
fight, and they're just like,
yeah,
oh my god, they're taking this place over.
yeah. So I mean, I get there. I mean, obviously, like I definitely walked in, and there's like that, like boom, like whoa,
Yeah, I'm
this is it.
here.
Like,
I'm
yeah,
here now.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it definitely, was an adjustment period. But I will say that was the best thing. Like being over there, getting my butt kicked on
Uh-huh.
the mats for 3 weeks straight. Um, and just honestly, from my side of things, the level of grappling
Mhm.
and the level of wrestling, and oftentimes when you think about SBG, you don't think about
I don't.
wrestling
I
or
don't.
or grappling, right?
I don't.
But
I think it's striking. Yes.
yeah, but I'm over there and there's like 200-pound Bulgarian dudes that barely speak English looking at me going, ooh, ooh, ooh. And you're like, you're like, all right. And
Let's go,
then
buddy.
he's launching you over his head, and you're like, shit, like, and and just yeah, just getting my butt kicked. And then you add in there's a young French guy, he's 23, his name's Assail. He's like 10-time national France kickboxing champion and like 3-time K1 champion, I believe. And just being able to kickbox with those guys, and even I got to kickbox with Key and Cowley.
Mhm.
So that, again, another phenomenal fighter, one of the original guys with SBG coming up with Connor. Um, and like just being around the level of talent, you start talking with guys and you're like, oh, like, do you have a fight coming up? And they're all like, yeah, I fought for Bellator last week, or hey, yeah, I'm fighting for Bellator this week, or you had Brad Katona, who's the Brave FC bantamweight world champion. I mean, obviously, when I got there, he was just at the end of his camp. Didn't get to do a whole lot of work with him, but just to pick his brain also. And that was the other thing, is just in conversation, picking up knowledge and just picking people's brains on different things. And yeah, they got a lot of, I mean, that whole gym's full of killers. It's just, you can't say that without, you don't say SBG without saying that that room's not full of killers.
From your perspective, like what were some of your goals heading into that camp in particular? Because obviously knowing your background, I think like the Robert Whitaker guy, I think of like a guy who not a lot of people are going to be able to strike with. A lot of people are going to have a certain game plan against you. And that kind of is a segue into this next fight. Listen, if I had a fighter and I'm like, we're fighting micro, I'm like, guess what? Guess what we're not doing? We're not striking with this guy. We are going to grapple him. We're going to make this an ugly, dirty fight. We're going to close the distance and we're going to take it to the ground. We're going to do jiu-jitsu. We're going to wrestle with this guy, but we're not standing and banging with this guy. 100% not happening. If I'm thinking it, everyone and their brother's also thinking it. I know you've thought about it too, and that's probably one of the drivers for why you went over there. But what were some of the goals that you had? I know, like we've talked about wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and I know that's something that you're hitting on quite a bit these days. But where were you at wrestling, jiu-jitsu prior to SBG, and like where are you at now?
Oh, dude. Oh, dude. I honestly, the biggest thing that I think I can take away from that is, as a striker in the past, like when I watched back my last fight, and even me and my head coach have talked about this, I fought, basically I was fighting the fight not to get taken down, instead of respectfully being like, you know what, pardon my French, but fuck your takedown. I'm going to put you on your heels and I'm going to knock your ass out. And I think just the biggest thing I took away from SBG was like learning to strike in a way of, who cares about the takedown? They're going to shoot. You know that they're going to shoot, but don't sit in a range that you're welcoming the shot.
Yeah.
If he's going to shoot, make him work for it.
Yeah.
And just, I think just little minor tweaks to combinations and the way I throw things, I think are going to pay huge dividends. And I've already noticed it. Like I've come back. I've got a sparring partner who he actually just fought in September for one of the top amateur spots for featherweight. And he's a great grappler, whatever. And even in conversation after, he's just like night and day.
Yeah.
And like just in the way I spar, and I'm not going to say too much because, you know, but yeah, it's there's definitely a level change there, as well as one of the biggest compliments I got from people over at SBG was, you are so fucking strong. Like one of the biggest compliments I got is like, if I've got you on the fence and I'm putting my weight on you, guys are just like, how much do you weigh? And I'm like, 160. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Well, you know, and I was also just kind of like, as you approach this next fight, and I definitely want to talk about this guy. I hope I'm saying his name right, Arman Deol. I hope I said it right. At Unified 47. Just looking at this man's background, what are you know? Can you tell me like what do you know about your opponent? Like stylistically, do you know what he kind of likes to do? And do you have kind of a rough idea without getting too detailed into your game plan? I don't want to ask you that, but as far as just expectations in general, what do you expect to see out of your opponent when you face off against them next month?
I mean, I full on expect the shot. I full on expect trying to hit me with a single. I full on expect trying to, you know, trip me. I like you said, and everybody and their dog knows it, that you're not going to stand and strike with me.
No.
If you stand and strike with me, you're going to wake up with your ass on the mat, going, what the hell just hit me? Because it's just, yeah, there isn't a 45er in Alberta. I honestly would even argue that there isn't a 45er in Canada. that wants to strike with me.
Yeah.
And if you do, hey, respect to you.
Yeah, then we'll welcome it.
You're not going to be on the winning end of it. For me going forward, when I look at, my matchup coming up, I have to stop the wrestling. Mm-hmm. There's a key point in time in the first round where I know there's going to be a shot, mm-hmm. and I have to stop that shot and make him pay for it, mm-hmm. to put that into the confidence bank of, hey, you're not just going to come in here and put me on my ass and take me down. This fight is staying on the feet, whether you like it or not. This is where it is going to be, and you're going to pay for it.
And I can only think of it if you're talking about like a grappler based guy. There's nothing more demoralizing than like level changing at the perfect time. You shoot for it and you don't get it. And it's like, oh, fuck, that took a lot of energy. And this fucker did not go down. I even got him up against the cage. I had his leg up in the air and everything. I still couldn't get it. And he broke away. And now we're in our feet again. And I am a lot more tired now. Like, oh, Jesus, now what? And, we still got 2 more rounds to go. Like it can go downhill quick and it can get demoralizing pretty quick if you commit to that level change and you don't get it. It's like, oh, Jesus, now what?
Yeah.
and I bet you could just see that drain out of their face too.
Yeah, especially when if you have a striker that's gonna smother you. Mm-hmm. Now you've just failed your takedown, but now that striker's in your face.
Yeah. Because now what are you going to do?
Because now that striker just gained even more confidence knowing, hey, you didn't take me down. Mm-hmm. Now, here I'm coming.
Right.
Now it's like smelling blood in the water. It's like a shark smelling blood. It's just all of a sudden you're just like, okay.
The one thing that I always like look to, and we take it for granted, the UFC fighters, the Bellator fighters, because if you're fighting at that level, by and large, there are some exceptions. By and large, everyone's cardio is good. Everyone's used to fighting 15 minutes. Everyone's used to even longer than that, right? Because like when you're training, like I'm sure you're going like 7-minute rounds or something freaking stupid. But everyone, by and large, has decent cardio at those upper levels. But when you're fighting like on the regional scene, I pay very close attention to cardio. I especially pay attention if we're talking about a grappler, because it's like, okay, you have 3 minutes, so you're talking 9-minute rounds, or I'm sorry, a 9-minute fight. That's a hell of a long time, by the way. That's an eternity. I don't know how you do that, but anyway, it's like opening up this, right? Opening up. I don't know if you can see that. It's one of my sparkling waters. I open this up. It's carbonated, and then what happens is that carbonation eventually dies out, and this is going to turn flat really, really soon. You can see exactly where I'm going with this. You see a guy right out of the gates when he's dry. Everyone's a beast when they're not tired, but they shoot for that takedown. All of a sudden, bam, that just sapped a whole lot of my energy. Now what? Then what happens, and who wants it more? Who has more tools? Like who has, and oftentimes I feel like who has the better cardio, not necessarily the better technique, especially at these regional shows, they're the ones that win these fights.
Yeah, and I think too, the other aspect that a lot of people forget about too is like, okay, round 1, the wrestler comes out, we're all dry. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe wrestler gets a takedown, right? Okay, you survive, you get 3 minutes on top of each other, you're well hydrated. Guess what? We're getting sweaty.
Yep.
Now round 2 comes along. Guess what? Striker, hey, every round starts on the feet. You don't get to go back to your position. Every round starts on the feet. Now we're a little bit sweatier, a little bit slipperier. You shoot for that takedown again. You're trying to body lock me. You're trying to hit that single, whatever. Hey, guess what? If my punch lands, that's still coming straight for your head. I'm not trying to grab you. I'm trying to hit you.
It doesn't matter how sweaty your face is, because that's still going to hurt all the same. It doesn't make a difference. And that's one of the more interesting things. Unified 47, it happens on 2 December. Not that long. Like, how excited are you to get back in there? It's been months and months and months of a wait. And now here we are. You're less than a month out. You got to be feeling really good about this.
Oh, I'm super pumped. I can't wait. I I can honestly say this camp, I'm 100% healthy. No fractured feet this time. I I feel honestly the best version thus far. My strength and conditioning coach, obviously, and also my nutritionist, Declan Walsh with Fight to Be Fit, um, has just the programming, everything. I just finished my last strength block, finished stronger than I ever have. Um, Now, also one of the things that hasn't been talked about a lot this camp is my work with his counterpart, Bree Howling,
Mhm.
who she just actually had a pro boxing fight last weekend. Yeah, I think it was last weekend. Out in Halifax, she's now 4-0. She signed with Pro Bellum. She's an absolute killer. Uh, I love been put in work with her for a lot of her camp, also helping me on the striking aspect of things, cleaning up different things, and so I think going in, I'm really excited to show the overall improvements and the overall game, and I just excited. I'm excited to go in there and put on an exciting fight. You know,
What do you
again,
want to tell for like what do you want to say? Like you're gonna have a lot of people that are gonna show up to this. I know you're an Alberta guy, and I know you're kind of like right in the middle of kind of two big cities. My Canadian geography, mind you, has gotten pretty good since I've gotten to know
yep.
you. So I know you're kind of like right in the middle there. And but when you go down to Calgary for this fight, I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are going down for just your fight. Like, what do you want those people to know? Like when you're getting ready to like walk in, like we've talked about some of this work that you put in. We've talked about how you've evolved and we've talked about how you're getting healthy, but like what else do you want to tell them if they're listening to this right before the second?
all all I'd like to say to everybody that's coming to watch is get your beer, get your hot dog, sit your ass in your seat, don't blink, because as my nickname states, and I mean I love Robert Whitaker, but they call me the Reaper, and I'm taking this man's soul.
It's 11 o'clock.
I'm hungry for this one. I'm not going in there to go 3 rounds. I'm going in there to make a statement and let everybody know who the top 145 amateur in Canada is, and make a statement and move on to the next. And just, it's just simple as that. I don't want to go, I have the gas tank, I have the cardio to do whatever this fight presents, but I'm going to get in there and we're going to make it quick and we're going to go home. Because guess what? I want to eat some fucking pancakes.
Hey, you know what you have earned those pancakes, Mike. Before I let you go, I wanted to ask for people who aren't able to make it to Calgary for your fight. Will it be streaming like on YouTube? Like how does the undercard with Unified work? Based by the side, maybe not the greatest news.
It's unfortunate. I've messaged the promoter a few times, hey, can we get something on YouTube for the amateur fights? Because I mean, hey, there's a lot of guys that fight and you have friends, family that can make it, and it would be awesome. Hey, Unified, let's do something with that. But of course, as always, there is a super exciting pro card. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in that, there's a lot of really big fights on that pro card. You can check that out on Fight Pass. But yeah, the amateur stuff, I'm like, it'd be nice if they would stream it on YouTube or do something. Because yeah, there's a lot of people that can't make it or have other previous plans, but would still like to catch a fight.
Absolutely. So, Unified, pretty please. I'm tagging you in this video, by the way. So, Unified, pretty please. Let's stream these fights on YouTube, por favor. I think that would be amazing. We see that with a lot of other promotions. They do that. CFFC, LFA, they stream those fights on YouTube or Facebook. I would definitely like to see that. Mike, I want to give you the opportunity. I know you have a lot of people that work in the Reaper's Corner to make sure that you're taken care of and are able to do the cool things that you do. So who do we need to thank? Who do we need to shout out before we let you go?
Number one, I'd like to shout out, obviously, Declan Walsh and his counterpart Bree Howling that work tirelessly and effortlessly and with Fight to Be Fit. Also, I'd like to thank Recover Lab in Red Deer, Alberta. They are one of my sponsors with the cryo and everything. Keep my body, take care of me, make sure through camps I make it through healthy, ready to go. Also, shout out to Knockout Canada, one of my other sponsors. And of course, friends, family, everybody that supports me along this journey. And yeah, let's go get a win.
Let's go get a win. Let's have you back on my show once you do. Mike, always a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope we can do it again soon. Best of luck on December 2nd. We will be watching, I hope.
I hope.